So the other day, I was going through some of my baby stuff and I literally found four different breast pumps in my house. I realized that I have actually been breastfeeding and or pregnant for over 6 years. Yes, 6 years. Can you believe that? My third baby is turning 1 in a couple of weeks, so I'm getting all sentimental. And while I'm still nursing her a couple times a day, I realized, why am I still breastfeeding? She's almost 1. But it's actually because of mom guilt. There is so much stigma around breastfeeding and breast milk, and so I love this conversation today with Dr. Stephanie Canale. Dr. Stephanie is a family medicine physician and professor and the founder of Lactation Lab, a company on a mission to help empower women with data to be their best selves and help their children thrive by taking the guessing out of breastfeeding and biohacking milk. This episode was recorded back at the end of 2020. And so at the time, I had an 8-month old. And I decided after this episode, I was so curious. So I decided to try Lactation Lab. And the results were so eye opening for me. I learned so much about not only the composition of my breast milk and what I was feeding my child, but it also gave me insights into my own health and vitamins and things that I was deficient in. So, for example, I found out that I was vitamin B12 deficient. And so, because of that, I'm going through a lot of different health journeys of my own in order to figure out how to better optimize my own health because of this. So, I highly recommend it if you are a nursing mom. Definitely check this out. Besides all the information I learned in this episode about breast milk from Dr. Stephanie, I found it so inspiring that she left an established medical practice to join a startup accelerator to pursue her passion in helping moms. So even if you aren't breastfeeding or don't really want to learn about breast milk, tune in anyway because she talks all about her journey as a mom, launching her startup, and the challenges with fundraising. Enjoy. Welcome to Mommy's on a Call, your sacred space to laugh, learn, and feel like a real grown-up human for a hot minute. I'm Stephanie Uchima Carney, a mom of 3 under 6, serial entrepreneur, business strategist, and donut connoisseur, just trying to get through the day one cold cup of coffee at a time. I believe that with more intention, a positive mindset, and self-care, it is possible to thrive in motherhood, business, and life. My mission is to uncover the daily rituals, life lessons, real-life tactics, and favorite tools to inspire and empower you, mommy, to get the most out of life every single unpredictable day. So grab your headphones, tell your kids you're on the potty, and tune in weekly for some laughs, knowledge bombs, and plenty of real talk with real moms, and maybe a dad or two. Welcome to the Mommy Pod. All right, welcome back to Mommy's on a Call. Today I'm bringing to you, I like to call her Dr. Stephanie because she is a physician, but she's also an entrepreneur and the founder of Lactation Lab. And I'm really excited to have her on the show today because she can shed some light on the breast milk side of things. But also, it's amazing that you are starting a company and even looking for investors, and you're in an accelerator and you're doing all these things that we think like, oh, maybe I would have done it in my 20s, but maybe not now, established with kids and all of that. And mind you, you are a physician too. And so I think it's great. So welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. I'm so excited to be here and so excited to chat with you.
So I wanted to start off by asking you, what is your biggest mom win of the week? And it could be you personally. It doesn't have to be about your kids, but like you as a person, what is your biggest win of the week?
I'm alive today talking to you.
I love how that stumps so many people. It's because we don't like switch on that, like you do amazing things. I mean, I'm sure you actually have 10 wins today that you didn't even think about.
You're probably right. And I would probably say that to a friend. But when, the first thought that immediately popped in my head, I was like, everyone's healthy, everyone's alive. That's a win. It's 2020.
For sure, exactly. So, okay, that's a win. I will take that. But I'm sure we'll uncover even more throughout the episode because you're pretty awesome. So, I wanted to start by giving the audience some context. Tell us a little bit about your family structure. So, how many kids you have, ages, and just what the dynamic of your family is.
Yeah. So I have 2 kids, ages 8 and 10. And I grew up in Montreal and moved here for residency. So the three of us, I'm married to, and the three of us have Canadian citizenship, but my husband does not, even though he grew up in Toronto. He was born in the States. So I've been here for coming up on 15 years now. And I was working at UCL. I came here for residency, then never left.
And are your kids currently distance learning at home or in school?
I feel like those are now mutually exclusive. The idea of distance learning at home. We have daily arguments in our home. Both of my kids are supposed to be distance learning from home. My son, though, is actually an expert now on Zoom backgrounds and like fibbing his way through being present in his class. I hope his teacher's listening. And I'm going to send her a copy of this too. Another Stephanie, by the way. Yeah, it's amazing. So they've talked about, he and his friends, I overheard them the other day talking about how to set yourself as a gift, like what is it called? A
A
gift.
gift? Yes.
And to make sure that you move and blink so the teacher thinks you're there as your background so that you can play video.
Oh,
Yeah, he's 10. He got in trouble already for having the fake background of his picture, and the teacher figured that out. So great, much more technical,
wow.
yeah, much more advanced than I am, for the record. But yeah, amazing how.
So, on a positive note, though, maybe they'll be the future innovators of the world and they will create amazing new technological things because they had to live through 2020. Maybe.
Right, I'm going
We're
to go with
saying
that.
that. Yeah, we're going to
Yes,
go
we're
with
saying
that.
that.
We're
We're going to
his
say that.
education's going to good use doing that.
Absolutely.
And then is your husband working at home or is he?
So he's working at home. We're very lucky to have a converted garage, so it technically a separate physical space, but he's also working full time on Lactation Lab with me. And that company was started, oh my gosh. So if you don't mind me telling you a little bit about
Yes, I
that.
was gonna say you were a doctor, or you still are a doctor. You're always a doctor, but give us a little bit about background about going through residency, all of this, becoming a doctor, practicing, and then now having a startup.
Well, it's so funny because like growing up, I never ever thought of any other career. I was like, if I go into medicine, then I will be independent. No one will tell me what to do. Oh, that's so funny saying that after 15 years of practicing at a large academic institution. And so, yeah, so got married, had my son, and pregnancy was fine, and breastfeeding, hardest thing I've ever done. So when I say hardest thing I've ever done, when I was a resident, we didn't have work hour rules. We worked, there was no 80-hour maximum. You just worked until you worked. That's it. You know what I mean? So we would be on call 36 hours, 40 hours. And that was sort of easy. And pregnancy, fine. And by the time I had my kids, I personally had done over 300 deliveries. So I thought I knew what I was in for. And I didn't. So for me, it was, I really felt like I fell off a cliff here, and my son, like very early on, I introduced formula. I struggled a lot with breastfeeding. But then when I had my daughter, who's now 8, I wanted to be the Instagram mom, not the one with the hair done all the time and in the pretend mermaid uniforms, but like the one who could breastfeed all the time, just whip out a boob and enjoy it and look happy and not even like be flinching at the latch and think this is the best thing, ever, and love this bond. And also knowing that, like, breast milk there's so many benefits to breastfeeding, right? So, first off, I tell people, I'm like, both of my kids had formula, otherwise they would have died. And second of all, people are surprised to find out how much I hated breastfeeding. And I started this company. But I was a mom in 5 minutes, could produce 2 6-ounce bottles. We had the separate freezer.
Wow.
We had I
That's
tons of them.
amazing. That was kind of like me with my first, but then for some reason, as it got, I mean, I'm still breastfeeding 8 months in, and I definitely don't pump that much anymore. I actually have a pump on my desk right here, right now, because I realize I'm like, I need to pump. My boobs are getting hard here. But that's incredible. And anyway, people say fed is best.
Yeah.
And to anyone out there, especially, who might struggle with that, it's honestly fed is best. So whether it's formula, breast milk, whether it's fully pumping or exclusively breastfed, whatever that is, as long as your baby's fed, you're doing a good job.
Well, my thing about that is like, you don't have an option there. You have to feed your child, right? So, whatever you do, that is a win. We're here to just help moms like me. So, I was producing a ton of milk. My daughter would start having a bowel movement every 10 to 12 days. So, by
Ooh.
day 7, we weren't leaving the home. We had no idea what was going on. We could tell her tummy was upset and so forth. And then she was falling off the growth chart. So she's drinking a ton of milk, falling off the growth chart. And I'm sitting there like, I'm supposed to be doing this thing that's easy, natural, quote unquote, enjoyable. Lots of air quotes going on right now. And the reality is, I really didn't like it. I knew it was, a good thing to try to do. So then I kind of went to exclusively pumping. And honestly, it was like I was the failure. I clearly was doing something wrong. My body wasn't doing what it was supposed to do because she's doing, like fading away in front of my eyes. So that really took me to a dark place. And then, it was really frustrating because I'd go into work every day. I'd see, 25, sometimes up to 30 patients a day. They'd come in, they'd say, "Oh, I want to know this, I want to know that. Why am I tired? I had my thyroid checked 3 months ago. I want it again. I want this." And we could get data, we could get answers. And so why couldn't I figure out what was in or what was lacking or what the calories were in my milk? Why was it such a mystery? And that kind of got me down this path of like women's health issues and the lack of research in this area. And when I'm reading studies from 1967, for the record, is older than me. Like, and I'm reading about like someone who studied breast milk and took a sample from 3 different women, pulled it together, and this is what they found. I mean, it's like, are you kidding me? I mean, it just really got me, feeling really frustrated and at a point where it's like I wanted information I didn't have. And that's really what set me on a mission to be like, you know what? I just don't want any other mother to feel the way I did. So our kids kind of work in 2 different ways, right? Like a mom collects milk, sends it into our lab, and she learns how her diet affects her milk. But also, if it's not working, sometimes, we've had moms tell us, like, this is what I needed. They needed to see proof that, like, okay, their milk is, let's say, 12 kilocalories per ounce. The average formula is 20. Like something to help realize it's not intentional, but you're made to feel that way. So we
Right.
really want to take away the guessing, try to alleviate mom guilt, which I don't think we ever will do in this lifetime. But if we can just, sprinkle a little bit less mom guilt on those moms. And if you do breastfeed a little bit, great. If you don't, great. We're here to support you, whatever you want to do. You know what I mean? And it's more to this. So we're trying to really expand with what we're doing at Lactation Lab and give women the answers in terms of diet, nutrition, and women's health that honestly we shouldn't have to go searching for.
And I'm curious, when you get all these results, obviously you're getting a ton of different data points and you get to see across the board. Do you track things like their age or their all their different demographics in order to kind of see like, oh, maybe it's across the board that women over the age of say 35, considering that's the point where you're apparently a geriatric pregnant person, because I was twice. If you're over the age of 35, you're producing less X or like less iron or less calcium or whatever that is. Are you tracking that data? Because I'm curious at what are the common threads you're seeing amongst all of these samples that you're collecting in comparison to either age or in comparison to diet or comparison to just like the problems they're having. So, say their kid isn't growing or something. Is there a common thing that their breast milk tends to be lacking?
Well, it's really common. I mean, I would say half the time it's the case with failure to thrive, which is like falling 2 percentiles on the growth chart. It's about 10 to 15% of breastfed babies. I'd say it's a 50-50. Sometimes it's the milk that's really low in calories, and sometimes it's not. And when it's not, it helps us figure out what else is going on with that kiddo. Is it an absorption issue? Is there chronic reflux? Is there something else going on with that kiddo? So it's helpful. And of course, these are non-invasive tests, right? It's just the mom collects milk and sends it in. I'd say on average, what I find interesting is these moms go down, and I say these moms because I'm not one of them anymore, and I'm very happy about that's my win for today. I'm not breastfeeding anymore. The reality is like a lot of breastfeeding moms, they know for a fact that what they eat affects their milk. So a lot of times they'll be like, oh, I had that, I don't know, salad and it had this in it or whatever, and my kid's super gassy and fussy. So what I'm going to do is avoid that. And, then they're told by their doctors, myself included, like, oh, it can take up to 3 weeks for some of these proteins to leave your system and so forth. So avoid dairy, avoid this, avoid this, avoid this. And there's no real feedback or information on what's going on. So we have seen a lot of low vitamin A. And vitamin A, we don't talk about very much in this country because it's fortified in most dairy products. It's sort of assumed across the board that people consume an average amount of dairy. I think the average nursing mom, 35 and over, oftentimes is avoiding a little bit of dairy. So that's something that we can consider. And I'd say vitamin A, B12, vitamin C, iron, calcium are very common. And I think that the other point is that I think it's misleading to think that a prenatal vitamin, which I have yet to see one that is significantly different from others out there, that replenishes everything you need. So, like B12, for example, like the average vitamin has like 8 micrograms, and I'm not sure that does anything for anybody, but yeah. So it's like it's this idea that, okay, well, especially first trimester. I mean, a lot of people have a lot of nausea, just don't feel good, super tired. So I'm not saying the average, like myself, my patients, moms that I know. I mean, it's hard to eat super healthy every day. Then I think when you're nursing, I mean, for myself, I was hanging on by a thread. The last thing on my mind was, what was I eating?
Right. And even I'm curious because, like, apparently my body doesn't absorb iron very well. And so I was always iron deficient. And so I wouldn't have known that unless I had like blood tests, but like I could be transferring that into my breast milk, or even though I would be eating a ton of iron and all of that. And so I would be interested to see if you've done any data or anything by doing like blood samples of the mom and testing the breast milk, or if you have any intention on doing that to kind of broaden the study.
Yeah. So in third trimester, if we do an iron panel in third trimester, which a lot of women become anemic through pregnancy in general, and that's measuring the hemoglobin. But when we do iron panels in third trimester, that will correlate with what's in breast milk. And you're right, everybody has a limit to how much iron they can absorb. Iron can be very constipating when you take it, can cause a lot of upset stomach and so forth. Same thing with babies. Breastfed babies are supposed to be on iron supplements.
Right. And vitamin D
And
too,
vitamin
which
D, right.
I'm
And like,
terrible about that. Like putting the drops and stuff, because I either have to put it on my like nipple,
yeah.
or like if she gets a bottle, I'll like remember, but it's so hard to remember to do all those things. So I can't wait to see what my breast milk has, because I know what I pump. A lot of times I'll see like it has like a thick layer of cream. So and my babies have always been so fat. So I mean, yes. And so I think like I don't give them skim milk. I apparently make heavy cream, but I'd be curious to see, and my babies have tended to drink less ounces. So I'm always discouraged when, the doctors are like, oh, your baby should be drinking like, 6 to 8 ounces right now at every feeding. And I'm like, she barely caps at 5, but I think it's because she's so full.
Well, I think it just goes to show we have nothing to really go by here. I mean, it still amazes me that in 2020, when you leave the hospital or home or whatever, when you have a baby, you're tracking the number of pee diapers, poo diapers, weight. And that's the only inclination. When we do see really low iron in mom's milk, which is not always the case, it's not like it's universally low in every baby. It's just more oftentimes low than not. But we can supplement mom and get those levels up. When the levels are consistently low, we're kind of pushing for those babies to be screened for anemia at 9 months and not a year. That's the little finger prick blood test they get at the doctor's office. And to just see, like, is there something there that can be done to again be a little more proactive with babies, so that when a baby is on solid food at that time, then really focusing on a lot of iron rich foods and so forth. But yeah, there's a lot that can be done in terms of, and what I find even more compelling now is like there's a lot of research that's showing that it's pretty clear that nutrition in the first 1000 days of life, so pregnancy, breastfeeding, and up until age 2, is like the most critical time for lifelong health. So I hate having to talk to, like I mentioned earlier to you, like we're fundraising for our company and so forth. And it's like I'm surprised that I feel like I have to convince people of this.
I feel like I'm on kid number 3, and I still didn't know that in the first 1,000 days, that's like the most important time. And I feel like I've already missed out on that on my other 2 kids, even though she's like 2.5. So I guess she's approaching that. But I'm like, did I totally mess up? So now I have this mom guilt again.
Yeah. Well, that's what we got to alleviate. So it's like, it's not about, it's just about like, how can we, for those who, I also think that it's like when people learn about how their diet affects their milk, right? And learn about what they can eat and so forth, it also gives moms back control. No more guessing about, do I really need all these supplements? Do I really need to increase my supply? I mean, I'm curious to see what your results are too, because it sounds to me like it's, even if you technically like have a low volume, it may not matter. It's not about volume only.
And I'm wondering, because my daughter's now on solids and I'm, producing less and she's taking less in. I'm just curious if like my, fat levels are the same, or if things have changed now that she's 8 months old. So that would be interesting. I like almost wish I could send in the sample from when she was like 4 months old.
It's crazy. Like it will change, but at the same time, I think that, like over 50% of moms, I mean, the statistics are just like mind boggling. Like 92% of moms report having issues with breastfeeding, and over 50% stop because they think they're not producing enough or they don't feel as though they're providing the right nutrition for their child. And there's nothing out there to help either prove, disprove, give information as to either support that or not support that, or at least to give moms guidance.
Why do you think, I guess, breastfeeding and all of this isn't more in hospitals, isn't more in pediatrician offices? I'm just curious because, like, I had my third kid and I felt like I got zero assistance. If I was a first time mom, they just handed me my baby and it was like, okay, go home. And it was like, how many peas and poops did you have? And it wasn't like anything else. And so a lactation consultant might come in if you're lucky during COVID times. They kind of shuttled you in and out the hospital really fast. And so new moms don't get that support. Is Lactation Lab doing anything to help kind of increase awareness in physician offices and hospitals about breastfeeding? Or you just focus primarily on building this data and giving moms like the information?
I mean, we're focusing on moms because moms get stuff done. And so in our Facebook community, we're like we have around like 7,000 moms in our lactation lounge. We are just shy of 30,000 followers on Instagram, and we're just trying to spread the word that we're here for you. We have telehealth services, so lactation consultants, doctors, registered dietitians, and so forth to help, but that you're not alone. And I think the biggest message that I keep wanting to get out there is just because something is natural does not mean that it's innately easy to do and or enjoyable. And so I think a lot of moms don't talk about the fact there's a lot of us out there that didn't like it. Like, talk about mom guilt. You feel like a bad person, a bad human being. Like, I did not like nursing. I didn't mind pumping, but I really did not like nursing. It hurt. It never didn't hurt. My kids did not have a tongue tie, did not have a lip tie. I don't know. Maybe I have the world's most sensitive nipples. I don't know. But I didn't enjoy it. And so, that makes me feel like a really crappy mom.
But you're not, because your kids survive. They're 8 and 10, they're alive and healthy. And so I think it doesn't matter. Fed is best. So I wanted to talk about the fact that you were a practicing doctor. What type of doctor were you again?
Family medicine, that's moms and babies.
And I mean, doctors, you go through so many hours, specialty, residency, schooling, all of this. And then you decide, you're passionate about this. And now you're going to start a company and you're going to start raising money and you have 2 kids already. Walk me through the thought process and what made you switch. And are you balancing both right now? Are you focused primarily on one? And talk a little bit about that journey from being an established doctor with a practice to now startup.
Yeah, I don't know if I can talk about that in a logical sense because I don't think it is logical. I question that pretty much on a daily basis. What am I doing? I had a full, like completely full practice, closed panel, over 6 years ago. And I questioned why, what was I just not happy enough with just, obviously my breastfeeding time was over. And why couldn't I just be happy with, just being a doctor and not do this? And I question that often, definitely on a daily basis now. Since COVID, I've been home with my kids because I don't have anyone else to take care of them. So I've been working on this full time, remotely and from home. But every now and then, this is going to sound really cheesy, but it's true, is I get these emails from moms who tell me, thank God you're out there because I needed this because it this, or I'm so glad I found you because of this. And like those messages, whoever you guys are out there, I mean, they have no idea how much that means to me. The feedback of like, this helped me continue, or this helped me do this, or now I know to do this. And I can tell that there's more to just testing milk as to what we're giving moms. There is a little bit of certainty here. There's value. It's backed by science. And whatever that may be is what keeps me going and what keeps me wanting to do more.
And are you practicing anymore, or have you left your practice?
I'm in the process of leaving my practice.
Okay.
Yeah. But so just focusing on telehealth services.
Right.
So remote. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
how do you balance being then a practicing doctor, founding this startup and focusing on that, being a homeschool mom at the moment, and all of that? What does the behind the scenes look like? You said you don't have childcare help. So what does your typical day look like?
Well, first of all, this is why I have a fake Zoom background as we're talking. And this is why you probably can't see this, but I have tons of caffeinated beverages right by my side, including the Starbucks double espresso shot, which I highly recommend. For us, it's a little chaotic in the morning because my kids like to yell at each other to make sure they're each in their own classrooms. We're lucky enough to have a number of devices and a little bit of space where they can spread out. Everyone, my son is permanently made his home and his classroom in our couch. So we definitely realized post pandemic we'll need a new couch. It's permanently indented now. Yeah. We just try our best. I think it's also understanding like this pandemic has been really hard on kids. My kids went from very, very active, going to school. And the best part of school is, of course, seeing their friends. And they were both avid hockey players and traveling for hockey in Southern California, which again, questioned my sanity there too. But the reality is they went from sports 5, 6 days a week to nothing. And I think it's really taken its toll on them and, the interactions and Zoom calls. And it's bizarre. But I think the reality is just trying to be a little bit of I wouldn't say it's just a blend. Some days it's definitely more of neglect and you're on your own. And if you're playing a video game in the background, I don't know, I'll probably get an email from your teacher later and figure that out. But I've just got to pray to God that you're doing what you're supposed to do. And part of it is just, I think there's a bigger message that I want my kids to know. I grew up very low middle class. I put myself through medical school. I've lived on my own since I was 17. I've had a job since I was 12. I want my kids to know that if you really believe in something and you really genuinely have good intentions of trying to help people, then you follow that mission. And, that's what keeps me going. So the sleepless nights, this and that, I mean, I've come to conclusions where we just started fundraising. I'm like, if we don't fundraise, well, we're not going anywhere. We're just going to grow so much slower. That's okay. We have revenue, it's just telling myself those messages, it's just the message I want my kids to know that if you feel really passionate about something, not trying is going to be 10 times worse than trying and failing. And I don't ever want them to regret that. And so I knew that if I didn't try this, I would regret it. And sometimes that happens on a daily basis, more often throughout the day. But I really think that, I mean, it's crazy to think we just finished the Techstars Accelerator program. We're 10 companies in the LA cohort. And I had this really disturbing realization that I was old enough to be the mother of a bunch of other founders, and unbelievably shocking and disturbing. But at the same time, I was like, if it's not now, I mean, when is a good time?
Right. There's never a good time to start something. And I think that's a big takeaway that I want, because a lot of my audience are moms who have young children. So most people have a kid of 10 or younger, and a lot of them have at least still a kid at home that is under the age of 5. And a lot of us have these roles that we play in life. And, we're not just a mom, we're not just a business owner, we're not just this. But a lot of times we put a box around that role and say, we can't do a startup, we can't launch a new company, we can't join an accelerator because those are just for 20-year-old dudes in the tech world. Like they have all the time in the world, but we put constraints upon ourselves. So I love seeing what you're doing, because I think it's refreshing and it's inspirational for other moms to know you have kids at home, you have an established career, but yet you're passionate about this mission. And you're right, it's now or never. Just do it and see what comes of it. I always say, you have to keep failing, you have to keep trying, because then what's the point?
Right. Exactly. I couldn't agree with that more. And I also think that, I think there's this notion of time and always thinking that, oh, well, there's not enough time to do that. When something's really important to you, you find the time, it works its way in. I've had some of my most productive days being at the office, seeing 30 patients. Don't ask me how, but I would show up an hour earlier, get tons of stuff done, work through lunch. It's just a mindset. It's not an actual hourly, you know what I mean? I just feel like there's so many other ways to do this. But the bottom line is I want my kids to grow up that if you feel very strongly about something, you try it. And what's the worst that happens? And so we play a lot of these things, even when my kids are a little older than yours. So when they're going through things like, oh, their friend did this or this happened or whatever, there's all these tragedies. We try to play out well, what's the worst that's going to happen? And for me, it's really important to go to have that exercise I do with myself, because I think that if I were to look back and say, oh, I never tried it, I had this idea, someone else is going to come in and do it. And then I'd feel like, what if? I don't want to have the what ifs. I'd rather have next time I'll do this.
And I think it's good. Do your kids watch you in this process of building your business, pitching and things like that? Because one, I think it's a good like role model. Like we say that I think parents are the best to like model behavior. And so to see your kids working hard at this, they'll get that message versus trying to drill it in their heads. But also, I kind of think it's a good thing for them to see someone say no to their parents or like say, I know people who are pitching and who are fundraising, you get like 1,000 no's before you get a yes. And to see that sort of resiliency and to see how you push through, it's pretty inspirational, I think, for your own children to watch.
I think it's also just, not everything is rainbows and unicorns. I mean, we had a very real, like just yesterday, we found out that someone stole a bunch of stuff out of our car.
Oh, no.
Yeah, apparently petty theft is going up around. I mean, not surprising, but it feels a little violating, and they just stole a bunch of, anyhow, like just to have those conversations with our kids, like, yeah, it really sucks. Today is a day that sucks. And so it's kind of funny. So I do tell my kids, maybe I tell them too much. Maybe that's a whole other episode we need to do. But my daughter started her own company that she plays with her dolls. So when she was 6, she decided to start her own company like mommy. And her company makes cups for milk for kids. And so she'll hear me and she'll say, how was your day today? How many did you sell today? And if I told her, oh, we sold like 10 kits today, she'll be like, I sold 8, or I sold 20, or and sometimes she'll be like, I sold 40,000. And I'm like, wow. Her business, she pivots all the time. So she's like the most brilliant person out there, but I hear her playing with her dolls and it's like, mommy's got work. Mommy's got a Zoom call. Mommy's got to do her business. And like, I love that. Like, I love the fact that, well, she's more successful than me, let's just say that, but with her sales numbers. But it's nice to see that, I think it's just about being real. Like I had an experience a couple of weeks ago with my son that really, really, really hit home with me. Like my father passed away and just about a month ago, and he was really sick for a long time. And it was hard because I couldn't go back home to Canada to see him because the border shut down. But with that being said, like it was like a couple days after my dad passed away, my son was trading some pet in some game and got really frustrated because he accidentally clicked accept and he meant to click decline. And he was just crying profusely. And I hate myself and like things I've never heard him say before. And I remember thinking like, wow, this is one of those times where if that had happened to me, I would have been punished, yelled at, hit, anything and everything above. And I said, this is an opportunity. I'm doing things differently. And I remember just having this moment where I was like, I make mistakes all the time. I had a call with so-and-so. Could I have said something different? Could I have like been a little more savvy with my financial model and my numbers? And, did I do my best? No. And I think it's that moment of like, we're not perfect. We're going to make mistakes, but that's okay. This is a pet in a video game. That's replaceable. And it's like, just the idea of like, we're constantly making mistakes. Like how many times have I been working on something and I click don't save and you're like, oh gosh, did I just do that? So I think that's just kind of the way that we're trying to be in our house, is that just kind of be real about life. And especially now, especially about entrepreneurship. I mean, for goodness sake, like, yeah, it's hard.
So, what do you think, speaking of being hard and entrepreneurship being hard, what do you think has been the hardest things about right now during this kind of like pandemic and being, say, even a female or a mom or not of the typical accelerator demographic? What do you think the hardest part is right now about trying to raise money and build this company?
I think the hardest part I have is trying to, I mean, my favorite things are the market isn't big enough, which is women, by the way. And during Techstars, I had a very interesting experience where, you meet all these mentors. It's like 50 or 60 people in a couple of weeks. It's like speed dating. And our team consisted of like 1 woman and 6 men. And men get this more than women. And so that what I find unbelievably frustrating is we're supposed to be in this culture of women supporting women. women helping women, women, all these venture funds that say, well, we're going to support, female founders. It's still frustrating to realize, like, I went from like one extreme, medicine, which, let's be real, is like one of the most misogynistic paths, to entrepreneurship. I mean, and here I am. It's really, really, really frustrating. But I do have one of the Techstars mentors I met is a woman. She's an amazing woman, and she had a really good quote that stayed with me. And she said, there should be a special place in hell for female founders that don't help other females. And I thought about that, and I'm like, you know what? You're kind of right. Like, there's something about women. We kind of, most of the time, sometimes help each other, lift each other up. But then this all goes back to like the mommy guilt, the mommy shaming.
So I had an interesting conversation about this, and I want to maybe pick your brain about it. I was actually speaking to someone about the difference between a lot of times. So, like, I'll get pitches for the podcast and stuff, and sometimes you're not a good fit. So I have to say no. But deep down, I feel this guilt like, I don't want to say no. She's an amazing mom. I don't want to shun a mom away, but it's just not the right time or the not right like alignment with my audience or something like that. And so I was feeling this huge guilt. But then what was interesting was I called out a few of my friends who were doing podcasts, and someone else had this like virtual summit, and everyone on their roster were men. And I'm pretty good friends with these people. So I called them out and I said, nice, you don't have a single female founder on that. And you know what they said? We asked more than 50% of the people female, and they all said no. And I found that to be extremely fascinating. And I'm like, I want to do like a psychological study on this because it like reversed. So, like, when people ask me for things, I feel guilty. And so I say yes. But on the flip side, when a male was asking them to be on their free platform, it was like, come on my show, come do this. They all said no. And I don't know why. And so I'm wondering, like, if you had any thoughts about this. It's, I mean, not in your line of expertise, but I'm just curious because kind of same thing. It's like the females are not, I don't know what it is.
I think it's really interesting. And I think that there's something to that because I read a lot about, like, a lot of my LinkedIn posts and stuff. They'll say like, oh, the most important thing you could do today is say no. Your time is so valuable. You're this. And I think that there's like this constant, at least I'm just speaking personally. I mean, a constant internal competition going on. And I remember like getting this email a long time ago. It was maybe 2 or 3 months ago. And someone said, oh, I'm one of my friends is a student and would like to talk to you about your. And I remember reading the email and thinking, like, are you kidding me? I don't have time to talk to a student. Like, I'm barely keeping my, I'm hanging on by a thread here. I don't have it like a. And then I thought about it about 2 weeks later and I said, I'm not going to be that person. And so I think there's this culture that saying no, which I mean, don't get me wrong. I think all of us should be able to have self-preservation and know the value of your time and know the value of yourself. But there's something that like you feel, people just they get to a level where it's like, my time is not worth this. Instead of, I have a different philosophy now. I've always said there's no bad cup of coffee, there's no bad conversation. Even if I end up talking to an investor who's like, we have nothing to do in your sector or whatever, you know what I mean? I can learn something. And so now more than ever, I mean, I'm grateful for the connections to other people, even if it's via Zoom. And I think it's just a different mindset, and the mindset of like, I'm too valuable for you and I'm protecting my time because, I think it's a little bit of that that's going on, which I can't say that I've never been guilty of, but I am now purposely trying to recognize that. And I think that if more of us as women said, hey, you know what? There's other ways we can do this instead of maybe being on for an hour. I'll tune in for 5 minutes. I don't know, whatever it is, but there's something
Right.
weird about
But
that.
I mean, and also with the whole female founders, I've been seeing that all throughout, the internet, on Twitter and everything about like, isn't it ironic that there's so many female founded VCs and things like that that are promoting investing in female founders and yet they're not. And so I was just curious at like, yeah, your experience through that. What is the pushback you're getting for anybody out there who is maybe looking to raise money, anybody even looking to just get, angel investors, whatever that is? What is the biggest pushback for you?
I think women who've never had kids And women who have never had an issue breastfeeding don't see this as a problem, don't see this as an issue. I mean, we went through, so I've done about like besides the last couple of weeks, maybe 4 or 5 phone calls, but before that, I had pitched to 3 different people. And one was a group of like old white men, and the guy in the group kept saying, well, we didn't have issues breastfeeding. We breastfed for 8 months. And I literally wanted to choke the person because I was like, there's no we in breastfeeding. So
There's
that
not.
didn't go very well.
Kind of like there's no we in pregnancy, but I'll give my husband a lot of credit because he did have to take care of the other kids and he had to deal with me. But they don't have to experience the hormonal changes, the chafing nipples, the blood coming out, all of that craziness.
Let's just say perineal care. Like there's
Yes.
none of that going on. Yeah, I agree. So the whole idea of we breastfeeding, I was like, whoa. And my husband happened to be there at that time, and he's like, I saw the look on your face that wasn't going very well. And then you kind of get to, well, like one of like I've heard before, like a woman like adopted a baby and is formula feeding, and they felt really crappy because I'm talking about like the benefits of breast milk. And I'm like, well, do you not, and they feel bad and they're offended by my story and what we're doing. And so there's a lot of, judgment. And I guarantee you, if I was a man that had started this company, I would be fully funded. I would have a team of 10 to 20 people. We would be probably opening up our second lab now. Like I'm convinced of it because I think that, men innately see like, oh, yeah, why don't we know this? When men get it, I feel so well supported. You have no idea. But it's women. And like, I remember when so another group of female investors in the Bay Area, like we were going through diligence with them. And then I get this email from like I don't know what you would refer to the person, like the coordinator or assistant. And it says, well, we're not convinced that diet affects breast milk. And so I scanned in about like 300 articles. So that like I had to use like the hardcore scanner, right? And I said, okay, well, like I'm not making this up. This is research for the last, I don't know, 30 years, whatever's public, available. And then I had this moment where I was like, you know what? My response to them, I hope they're listening, is to say, there's such a shortage of breast milk for all of our premature infants in the hospitals, right? Preemies, there's a shortage of human milk. If diet didn't affect milk, then why are we not importing it from Bangladesh? Why are we not importing breast milk from, all of these poor countries in the world, saving lives of premature infants in this country, right? So the argument doesn't make any sense. But it's the fact that I was questioned about it after the fact. It's the fact that, speaking of like the entrepreneur stuff, I remember thinking before Techstars, and I'm very grateful for our managing director because she really helped me grow as a person too. But I remember thinking like, oh, I'm waiting on this partnership. Oh, this can happen. Oh, this can happen. And then I had this moment where I couldn't sleep. It was like 3 o'clock in the morning. And I was like, screw it. I'm doing it. Right. Like and then the part that killed me, I was like, I'm a doctor. I know this space. I'm not just someone who said, oh, I want to go start a business. So that's what really I had this mind shift where it was like, you know what? I'm not going to wait for other women to potentially see if they're interested and have the time to maybe help me. Screw it. I'm doing it myself.
I love that.
That's my mission. And, and down the road, I'm just going to remind myself of how crappy I felt. And I don't want another female founder to feel like that. So like when, I've had a couple of companies reach out to me, they're not even, don't even have a product on the market right now. And I'm like, yeah, we'll have a half an hour call. Absolutely. Like, there has to be, and I think it's the whole mentality of like, trying to give first, trying to believe, and 2020 has really pushed this for me, but really trying to believe that like there's good out there, and like, you put out some good energy in the world and maybe it'll come back. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I love that mindset shift that you had there. A lot of us have mindset shifts too when we become a mom. So I'm curious to kind of wrap it up is what is a mom's superpower that you gained when you became a mom that makes you better at business, life, whatever that is? So something you might not have honed in or had a power before. And then once you became a mom, suddenly you have this power.
I'd say I gained one power and I lost something. The thing that I lost is the part of my brain that can remember people's names has died.
Well, we should all be named Stephanie, by the way. I mean, it just makes it easier.
Stephanie, Jennifer, we're good. Yeah. So that part of my brain's dead. It's just not coming back. So it was, mourning for that loss too was important. What I've gained is absolute multitasking. And my husband has this picture where this is back, my son was like, I forget, it was my son, my daughter, one of my kids. I was feeding them with a bottle in one hand, had my phone on the shoulder on the other hand, and then answering my pager back when we had pagers. And I had it all done at the same time. And I was like, this is the mommy moment for me. That was the moment where I was like, I got it. It's multitasking. And it's amazing what women can do. I mean, geez, I also noticed it with my son growing up, like when he was 2 or 3, when he was old enough to understand, like, okay, go put away your toys, put this, do this or whatever. And I was like, oh my God, this kid can only do one thing at a time. And then I had this moment of like, my husband can only do one thing at a time. Like maybe this is a boy thing. I don't know. But my daughter, innately, I'll be like, I just look at her and she gets it. I give her a look and she'll be like, I need to go clean up my toys now or whatever. But my son would be like, go clean this up, come back, go do like, so I think women, I mean, we're like superheroes when it comes to like multitasking.
Well, don't they say that if there's a problem, just put a mom on it, or like there's nothing like a mom on a mission or something? I forgot what that phrase is, but
it was it was a celebrity. It was Gwyneth Paltrow who said like, I love hiring moms because they get shit done.
yeah, pretty much. And then my last question is, what is your number one survival tip for either working moms or mom entrepreneurs right now?
Be kind to yourself, because I don't know anybody out there that has everything together. And if they look like they do, they have a team of people helping them. So I think it's just being kind. Like if your kid's getting McDonald's drive-through for lunch every day, whatever, it's okay. This is not a normal time. These are not normal circumstances. And I think we just all have to be nice to ourselves first.
That was beautiful. Where can we all find you?
So our website's lactationlab.com. We also sell our kits on Amazon. And now we just have our kits are FSA, HSA eligible. So you can use FSA, HSA cards.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing all of that juicy information, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Mommy's on a Call. Your support means the absolute world to me. You can find the show notes for this episode and other goodies over at mommysonacall.com. And if you enjoyed this episode or have gotten value from the podcast, I would be so grateful if you could head on over to Apple Podcasts and leave a rating and review so that we can reach and empower more moms all over the world together. Thank you so much again, Mommy Pod, and I will see you here next time.